Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today's episode is interesting. I have somebody, she's from the UK, living in Chicago. She's got a great story about entrepreneurship and how she got there and how she used, what she was supposed to be using to go to university, and how that she developed this sort of entrepreneurial spirit. And like most of us, she's won and failed. She's learned from those lessons, and she's created a great little business to help entrepreneurs who are struggling with process, who are struggling with not being able to see the trees through the forest, right? They know their business, but there's some things that may not even be broken, but they're just not able to function the way they want them to function. And she can break it down, do an audit, and help you see and help you prioritize what you need to do that will help you scale quicker and know where to spend those times. And she's not claiming that she does everything, that she might just say, hey, this is a problem, it needs to get fixed, and I don't do that. But here's some resources to go to. So there's a cool little link in the show notes to be able to engage, and she gives you a bunch of information. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars with Olivia Parkes. So Olivia, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Walter. Looking forward to it.
I got to compliment you on your the way you did a request to get on the podcast as a guest. You did a great job with the video explaining why. It was just the right length to keep my attention, and so I've been looking forward to this since I received that a few weeks back. So
yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So why don't you kind of set up for the audience? I see you as a fractional CEO helping that company that's trying to grow but just doesn't have the capacity or the resources to go hire that person, but needs it. So can you share a little bit about how you got to that spot, and then we'll talk about what you do a little bit. But I don't, you're still a young person. You're not old and gristled like me, but I think you got to have an interesting story, entrepreneurial story.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely never thought that I was gonna be doing this soon. I think I definitely had some ideas about entrepreneurship, but growing up, I was very academic. Like I always wanted to be the A-star student, the good girl. I always did really well in school, and that was kind of my goal. Like I wanted to go to Oxford.
Those are sometimes mutually exclusive. Being a good girl and being an academic star, those aren't necessarily the same thing. In your case, it was.
Yeah, in my case. Well, I don't know. It's arguable if I was a good girl at some phases, but in a school sense, I always wanted to do well, if that makes sense. Yeah, I always wanted to do well in terms of school, but yeah, I always had this dream. I wanted to go to Oxford or Cambridge, and I got interviews. I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was Oxford. Yeah, I got interviews at Oxford, but ultimately I didn't get in, and that was kind of like a blow to the ego. And so I ended up going to UCL. But then during that time, like just before I took my A-level exams, how it works in the UK, you do your A-levels, and then with those grades, you get into university. But just before I took my exams, like a few months before, my dad actually passed away. And that kind of...
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It is what it is. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now, because that kind of brought my life into very sharp perspective, like the person I was being, how I was showing up. I was kind of negative, through that phase, in like that teenage years of my life, and I could kind of see that Like my dad was like that in many ways, and I was kind of going down this path where I was not accepting help from people, turning like creating arguments with my family for no reasons, that kind of thing. And so when he passed away, I took a look in the mirror and I was like, what do you really want, Olivia? Like, what do you really want to create with your life? And it took some time for all of the ideas to kind of like meld together. Like, I ended up going to university, and then it was during my second year of university, I was like, is this really what you want to do? You're going to be the options. I did a science degree. It's like, you're going to work in a lab and be a researcher, or you could go into investment banking. Then maybe in a decade, you'll make the kind of money you want, but sell your soul to climb the corporate ladder. So I was like, I don't really want to do that. And I always kind of knew I wanted to own a business eventually. Like, I always kind of saw it down the road. Like, my stepdad was, well, he is an entrepreneur. And so I was kind of always exposed to that kind of thinking. So I was like,
Mhm.
why not just do it now? And so I'd kind of got myself in a place where I was like good mentally. Like, I used my student loan to pay for therapy, like didn't tell anyone where I was going, like that kind of thing. I used my student loan to pay for many things, as you'll see here in this story. But one of them was therapy. And yeah, so I did that, and then I was like, let's start a business. I first started an e-commerce business, Amazon FBA. Did not go so well. The product kept getting taken off Amazon, and it's still in my house in the UK right now. We're wholesaling it, so that's quite funny. And then I started an advertising agency, and I would just cold call potential clients in between lectures to try and book clients. And it wasn't really working because I was like very scared at that phase in my life. Like, I was scared of like trying to close someone. I didn't know what I was doing in a sales aspect, but I did have a friend I knew that was very good at sales and kind of got me into the whole like online marketing world. Like, he had helped me with a few like branding things and things like that. And I knew he was really good at sales. So I rang him up and I'm like, who taught you sales? Because they're doing something right. I need to learn from them. And he put me in contact with this guy who he used to live in San Diego. And he's like, yep, this guy has been doing high ticket sales for over a decade. He's built high ticket teams. Like, he's worked with some like big names in the industry. Yeah. And he started a sales training and recruiting business. And it was like very much in the beginning stages. So I was able to like do his course, and then I used my student loan to pay to do one-on-one coaching with him, and I ended up like actually getting good. Like, now I could close deals. Now I wasn't so afraid, and
Perfect.
I was getting like pretty good. And he asked me, he was like, "Do you want to come work with me and like do sales with me?" And I was like, okay, cool. So, I was in the UK still doing university. I still, got my degree. And so in the day I would just study. And then when it got to the afternoon, because it's like 5 p.m. in the UK is 9 a.m. in California. So then at 5 p.m. I would start working for him, and I would do calls and whatever. But it just became apparent after a while that like he didn't, for lack of better words, didn't really have his shit together. So he was great at closing deals. He was great at the sales aspect, leadership, like vision, inspiring the team. But like after the sale, he was just not good at it. And I kind of got it at the time because I was like, well, he's a sales guy. Like, he's been doing sales for over a decade. He's never had to touch the fulfillment. So it makes sense that he would be this way. And so I've always been very like systems thinker, operationally minded kind of thing. So I could see what needed to be done. So I just kind of stepped in and did it. And I just taught myself through necessity. Like, I would set up all of the automations in the business that were needed. Like, I set up all of the CRM. Then I started like hiring people for the team. I started training like the salespeople because now I knew sales as well. So like I would train the salespeople that we had brought in through the course and like get them ramped up so we could like place them with other businesses. Like, there was even one point in the business where he lost his voice and he got COVID at the same time. So he was like out for a month. And so I just like took over the whole business. So I was like closing the deals for the company. I was dealing with our team. I was dealing with the clients. And, it was crazy. Like, it was, I
You were
sometimes,
still you were still in England.
Not at that point. That point when he lost his voice and stuff, I wasn't in the UK. I had completed my degree at that point. I had gone. I was actually in Mexico. Like I was in Mexico at that point because I was trying to go out to the States because this was all during COVID. So I
Oh,
had to go to
there's
Mexico for 2 weeks to quarantine so I could even get into the States because they weren't letting people in straight to the UK.
yeah, there
So
was some craziness going on at that time. But
yeah.
let me interrupt you because it's a really interesting story, and it's a common problem that entrepreneurs have that come from like places that I came from, where we always sold and we flew by the seat of our pants. We had a process to sell, but we flew by the seat of the pants, and then somebody else picked it up and did the delivery, did the operations, did the manufacturing, whatever that part was. And so don't take this the wrong way, but you're a little weird if you can do both of the sales part and do the integration part and the delivery part. That's a unique set of skills, and I say weird in a positive sense. Um, so did the guy that you were working with, did he recognize and appreciate what you were bringing to the party?
He did. Like, he knew that I was very valuable to what we was doing. Like, I was his number two. Like, I was able to go and meet some really high level people because of it. Like, he was a big, like, sales guys, like, they're relationship builders. They usually know a lot of people in a lot of different places. And so if you're connected to someone like that, you get to meet a lot of people. And so I did get to see inside a lot of, because he would always just go and out and make like joint venture partnerships like with other people we knew in the industry, like pretty big names in the online marketing space. And so I would somehow find myself on these calls with like CEOs of businesses doing like 10, 20 million a year, seeing inside of their business and all the issues they're facing just because this guy was like a huge relationship builder. And so um, yeah, I mean, he did see the value in what I did, but ultimately, like, we definitely had some disagreements over like who was doing the work really at the end of the day, because it kind of got to a point, especially like I could prove I could run the business without him, and so like I wanted to be compensated fairly for that. And like even when he
That's
was
what I meant about recognizing, right? Because it's
out,
one thing to know somebody's helping me do this. It's one thing I have more free time to do the things that I actually like to do and I'm actually good at. And it's another thing to recognize it with the individual, right?
mhm.
And sometimes it's compensation, sometimes that's recognition, sometimes that's just pure acknowledgement of success and sharing the success. But usually it's a combination of all those things. So,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
was that is that how things kind of broke up a little bit?
Yeah, it was definitely like partly compensation and partly just after a while I didn't agree with his leadership anymore. I felt like he would say one thing and do another. Like I
Mm.
lost respect. Like I lost the value of his word, basically. Like I couldn't
Yep.
trust he was going to do what he said he was going to do. And it becomes like really hard to run an organization with someone who doesn't do what they say they're doing, but they're supposedly in charge. And then I'm not being like compensated to the level where I'm, just gonna kind of like step in and take over and do the amount of work I know is required to move this forward. Because if it was my own business, I would do that regardless of what anyone else is doing with their word. But I'm like, this isn't my business and I don't have equity in it. And so I'm like, it doesn't really make sense for me to put my energy into this anymore. And if I
So
don't,
you learned the hard lesson of well, I mean, you learned great lessons the hard way, but you had great opportunity along the way. And does that lead you to where you are today, your current business? You took all of those ideas. Was there another step in the process?
yeah, I mean, it was mainly that. So, I helped him like over double his business in the time I worked with him. And I met so many other entrepreneurs. And it's funny because like I thought that it was kind of isolated problem because he was a sales guy, the way that I had to kind of step in and do all the operations and the integrator stuff. But the more I met all of these entrepreneurs that he got me connected with, and the more I was in the States and I met even more entrepreneurs, I realized like it's not just a salesperson thing, it's like a visionary entrepreneur thing. Like they have all of the ideas, but and a lot of them get like a pretty good length along the way, like they still create a lot of great things. But what I kind of realized is a lot of these companies is they have a great front on like marketing and sales, and you almost think that it's like amazing, but then when you see behind the curtain of what's actually going on, it's like
Chaos.
chaos. Yeah.
I have a client who um, our relationships goes in and out just due to various things that we need to do, but we've remained friends. And one is a visionary, and one is the integrator, the partners in the business, and they're true visionaries and true integrators. And the visionator basically recognizes that he comes up with ideas and then creates all this chaos, and then the integrator's got to go figure it out with the team. So what they've come to this conclusion is you come up with an idea and we say it's good and we're going to move forward with that one idea out of the five, then you just go away. Just go away and start sitting under a tree thinking about other stuff that we can do, but let us get this one thing done, right? And he's part of the business. He's still there. He does a lot of the rah rah stuff, but he doesn't. They've drawn a line in the sand. He can't keep coming back in and causing chaos. He just stays at a high level, and they've made it work. It's taken some time, but they made it work. So this guy that you worked with had it made. If you really think about it, he could have stayed doing the thing that he really liked to do. All he had to do was open up the pocketbook a little bit, right, and demonstrate some recognition. So, but good for you, right? It ultimately creates something that you can go have your own business, your own, and run it your own way, without. Once you lose respect for somebody, it's hard to go back to that anyway. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
it is.
talk to
And
me a little bit about what you're doing now and how that. If my audience is mostly small business owners under that $25 million range, like how do you step in? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you solve problems, or what does that look like?
yeah. So I mean, really the person I help is the person that is they're kind of running around in that ordered chaos right now, aren't they? They're all feeling like they're always getting dragged back into the day to day. They might feel that their team isn't doing the things that they want them to do, or like they're just not working autonomously. They're doing things manually that they know that can be automated. It's kind of like there's a really big gap between the ideas in their head and like what's actually going on, and it feels like they're always on the back foot, right? So that's the person that I help, and I help them build the systems so they can actually properly get out of the day to day, implement the team, the accountability, the leadership, and putting, the right people in place so the CEO can get out of the way, essentially.
Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. Do those systems that you work through, are they top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, after the deal is closed? Where can you add value in those processes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, with all my clients, I actually start by doing a full audit of their business. And this takes like several hours, but I'll get them on a call and we'll go through a questionnaire process I've already created. I'll have them show me all of their KPIs for all of their departments. I'll ask them questions about their team, how much they're compensating everyone. I'll have them show me start to finish what is going on in their sales process, their marketing, their fulfillment, and anything to do with their finances and their current state of their internal operations. And as I'm doing this, I'm like picking out all of the holes, the red and yellow flags in what is going on, and then kind of comparing it to what is their ultimate vision and where do they want to go, and like the pieces of the puzzle I know that they need in order to get there, right? So by the time we've done this audit, I've probably gathered a lot of red and yellow flags, and then I'm creating a list of like, what is the highest priority thing we need to solve now that is going to set your organization up to be in the best place to go. And with a lot of people, that looks like remobilizing the highest leverage assets they have in the company right now, which is their team, right? A lot of people that have a team, they're underutilizing it, and they're kind of building resentment to their team. But your team is like, I always kind of give this analogy. It's like Lewis Hamilton trying to win the Formula One driving a Toyota Prius, right? You might have the best team member in the world, but you put them in a bad system, they're never going to reach their actual potential. So first thing I do is I like mobilize the operational processes to improve how their team is performing. That's often usually ends up being the first thing that we do. So reclarifying the org chart, roles and responsibilities, KPIs, what is everyone doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? What targets are they hitting and why aren't they hitting them? Right? A lot of people just don't have KPIs, or they're just pulled out of thin air, right? They're just not even like real. So usually that's first, and then next, we go on to the next most pressing issue in the company, which is usually either sales or back end fulfillment. Usually, it's going to be back end fulfillment if they already have some steady sales coming in. But if we were to go hard on their sales process now, their fulfillment would break. If their fulfillment would break, we need to focus on the fulfillment first. So we kind of map out everything in their fulfillment process, what can be automated, where are SOPs missing, who is going to be responsible for doing what, how are we making sure we're getting the client's results, how are we making sure we're getting testimonials and referrals from this, right? Mapping out that whole A to Z process of how you're actually getting a client result, and developing it into a system that your team can successfully run. Okay. And if you're running it right now, how can we hire the right people to run it? Okay. So it's that, and then it's usually moving on to the sales process. So that can either, it depends if we're going to go straight from, generating the leads, if you need people to do outbound sales, that kind of thing, or are we focusing on the, hiring, training, onboarding, closes, sales reps, right, that are already just showing up to calls on their calendar, that kind of thing. So yeah, and usually once we work through all the systems in their business that needs improving, then it becomes about like increasing profits, new areas of expansion, optimization, right? So maybe it's creating a different offer, it's creating an ascension plan, like something we can ascend existing customers into that's going to increase profits. It's creating a low ticket on the front end. It's a whole bunch of different things, but now we're getting into like the real like expansion of things.
Yeah, that's a second and third level, creating a ladder for people to go someplace.
Exactly.
So what if if you're talking to a CEO and they're like, my operations, my fulfillment, average, they need help, but I want to break them. And I think that's the best way I want to put pressure on them. Break is the wrong word. I want to put pressure on them to really test them to see how badly they serve, but I need to increase my revenue, and I have no problem closing business. I'm just not getting top of the funnel stuff coming through. So if that's the CEO's position, where do you go from there with that individual?
So
you're still doing your audit.
Yeah, so it's really a marketing issue at that point, is what you're saying. It's like a lead generation issue, right? Yeah. So with marketing, I'll say, you can't be the best at everything, right? And so I do have a skill set in sales and I have a skill set in operations. And so with marketing, it's not like I'm going to be in the grounds, like writing your sales page or whatever, but like I know what assets you need in order to be successful. So depending on, because I work with clients in a whole bunch of different niches and types of businesses and stuff. So I'm going to look to see, okay, what marketing channels do you have right now? Why are they not giving like a specific amount of output? Is it because you need to do more cold messaging? Like, do you need to do more cold messaging on LinkedIn, let's say, for example? If that's the case, we can get someone on there and mobilize it. is it that you're just not posting content, or you're posting content that's really bad and it's not generating leads? Okay, how can we optimize that, get you some training around that? If you've got some channels that are working well but they're not bringing you enough leads, then it's like, okay, what channel do we go to next? So where does your ideal audience hang out? Where does your ideal client hang out? Then we create the strategy that works successfully on that channel. So
So you just go. It's a similar process in terms of evaluating what's working and what's not working. What level of success you're having. How are you measuring that? And then discerning whether you need to do more of that or go find something completely new, niche down a little farther. You're you're just helping somebody see the trees through the forest that we often can't see because we're in the middle of it. Is that
exactly.
fair?
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, a lot of people will say that a certain channel isn't working for them, but it's because they're not like doing the right things. Like they might say that LinkedIn isn't working for them, but you look at the content they're posting, and there's no way that that would generate leads, and they're posting once every 2 weeks, and they're not messaging potential clients, or if they are, they're messaging them in a really spammy way. Like they're not actually sending messages that are going to convert and building relationships, right? So it's like, it's things like that that can be improved, and it's when you dial those things in, and then you just get down to the KPIs. Like if you know that you're going to send 50 messages on LinkedIn a day, let's say, you're going to get X% back, and then X% of them are going to book into calls. Then it just becomes a numbers game, and now you've got a scalable lead generation channel.
Oh, okay. Um, so and you're sort of agnostic about the industry and the marketplace. You can help somebody whether they're in a construction space or a manufacturing space or a distribution model. The nuts and bolts are similar enough for you to be able to go in, or are you focused on one particular area?
I work with a variety of businesses. Like, I think it depends mainly what their problems are. Like, like I said, I can identify marketing channels, and I know like the bare bones of, I know like what you need to do, and I know the pieces that need to be put in place. And like with the sales aspect, yeah, I can definitely engineer that for you. But like if I was going to build, a marketing campaign for a manufacturing company, that I wouldn't be the best suited for that. But in terms of in engineering their operations and seeing how we can use that team better, how can we automate and build systems, then yeah, everything I see is like very similar between the companies I work with, like from e-commerce. I have one of my clients right now is a large cleaning business. Have marketing agencies, CPA accounting firms, like brand agencies, like whole different things like that, as well as like coaching businesses. So the they think that this is the thing, like every business thinks that they're unique and their problems are unique, but the more businesses you see, they just fit into the same buckets.
Yeah, I think I hear that once a week. I think would be a good average for what I hear somebody say. Oh, you our business is different. You don't understand. Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell me more about that. And you can get them to understand and break it down for them, but yeah, it's the challenge is not arguing with them about it. So, but you said something that I think is really important that entrepreneurs need to hear is that you have areas where you can identify that's a problem and you need to be doing A, B, and C. I'm not the person to go do A, B, and C, but that's what you need to do. And I can be really good at solving these problems and building these systems out. And I think that's being clear with somebody, like where that line is something that entrepreneurs we get in our way. We get ourselves in trouble by saying, "Oh yeah, I can do that," and then you go try something and it doesn't really work. If we stay in our lane and we stay focused on what it is that we're really good at, and it sounds to me like you can identify the challenges and say that needs to get fixed, and I'm not the person to fix it, but it needs to get fixed for the other things to be working. Is that fair too?
Yeah. I do my best to be as self-aware as I can about my skill set and where it starts and ends and that kind of thing. And I think you hit on a good point because like entrepreneurs, I see it a lot. Like we almost have the tendency to like say yes to anything and then figure it out later, right? Like you're on a sales call with a client, you almost like say yes, I'm gonna do this, and then I'll just go like figure it out later. And like for some people, it pays off, and like maybe in the beginning of stages of business, like if you didn't do that, your business never would have taken off the ground. Like who knows? Like I do see it a lot, and you hear it in people with that have big success stories, but I think there's kind of like a limit of what you can agree to, right? You
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. I'm thinking of a story when I used to have a sign business where we did various types of signage. And my customer service rep came to me and said, "Hey, I got a person in the conference room and they got this problem, and so I need help." So I went up there and we had a conversation. I got really clear about what it was that they were looking for and the time frame they wanted it. Um, and then they said, "All right, give me a couple of days. I'll come up with a solution for you with a proposal." So he leaves and she looks at me. She's like, "What are we going to do?" I was like, "I have no idea. Literally have no idea how to solve that problem. However, I know the guy that does." And he was already a vendor, so we got together with that person and we solved the problem. So I think, to your point, if we know our limitations, the old Clint Eastwood line from a Dirty Harry movie, the man's got to know his limitations. I think if we know where we can go and where we can't go, and we know how to solve it within that range, it's when we go out of bounds that entrepreneurs get into trouble. And saying yes is like is tempting, but it often can open up a series of challenges that do nothing but damage our reputation. So important. Um, so I'm thinking about a situation with a client that I've been working with, and we've been working on sales process and methodology and what it looks like to hire somebody that they need for a salesperson, but you're not ready yet, right? I mean, that's where we are. But on an operational point of view, she's adding crews to her business before she really has the need to. And then there's some inefficiencies there. And that's not my area, right? I'm not an ops person to know when do we pull the trigger to add the person. Can we be more efficient with the person we have? So is that a scenario that would be I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but is that a situation where you could help somebody, in a construction business where they do most of their business through the bidding process and their team travels a little bit? Is that an area where you can help them find more efficient use of their resources?
Yeah, I mean, so what are you saying? Like they bid for the what's the bidding process?
So they would do work with institutions, K through 12, healthcare, large commercial projects. So there's a bid process through the construction market. They have a specialty business. They have competition, but not a lot. They have a niche. They have a defined geography. Um, she wants to grow. And is it the right thing to add another crew, or is it another? Is it the right thing to become more efficient at the crew and know what the trigger point is to add that second crew
Right.
and
Got
third
it.
crew?
Got it. Well, I mean, I'd have to like audit the business to see,
Sure.
really, but it's about okay, look at the crew that we have right now. Like, what is their output? What is their efficiency? Do we like let's look at the process of how we're managing them. Are there things that I
Scheduling.
know here that is really inefficient? If that's the case, like let's improve those things. Let's see how efficiency increases. Like, do these team members even have like does the crew have KPIs? Like, do we know like what is their actual capacity? Does this capacity weigh up with what is like a good standard for this industry? Like, is the capacity of this crew like hitting not even just average, but like above average, like optimized for this industry?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then we know we've kind of like made that as efficient as possible, and now we have to add another crew, right?
And
So
they're not going to be as efficient, and they're going to have more. It's going to take them longer to do jobs. Blah blah blah. Right? Those are all things that have to be part of that discernment. Okay, that's kind of what I'm trying to help the audience understand that there's a series of problems that you can dive into as a way to start to diagnose. And at least what I see when I look at somebody's sales processes and methodologies, and how they do follow up and what their top of the funnel looks like. Um, there's usually they think the problem is X, and it's really over here is their problem. It's not, it's M, not X. And the biggest example I can think of is everybody complains about revenue forecasts being inaccurate and just wrong, and they discount it 40%. And that the problem with the revenue forecast isn't so much the revenue forecast, but what they allow to go into their pipeline, and what they allow to put in as opportunities that they're chasing. There's no qualification to like who gets to come into the pool. Everybody's in, and you can't, if you don't have some way to have a gate at the front of that to really decide and qualify. And when we do that better, that takes time, but when we do that better, your revenue forecast automatically becomes more accurate because you're not diluting the likelihood of you're going to increase your win rates because you're not letting crap in that isn't going to close. It wasn't very eloquent, but there's a bigger problem earlier in the process, and that's what you uncover, I think, in various aspects of the business. So
exactly, because like as an entrepreneur and just as a human in general, right? It's like you don't know what you don't know, and to be successful, you have to have awareness that there's things you don't even know, right? You know there's things you don't know, and they are potentially blocking you from growing, right? So now it's kind of your job to go on a mission to like find out those things or like speak to people that can reveal those things for you so you can move them out of the way and like move forwards. It's like the thing you just said. I had a similar experience with someone the other day, like talking to a potential client, and they're saying that they want to hire a sales manager and they want them to start building out their own sales team, like with commission only sales reps and stuff. And I'm like, well, what's your sales process? Like, what's your process for onboarding these reps? How much are the current reps on your team making? Like, what is their script? What's all that process? They don't even have that like mapped out. And I'm like, well, you don't even have that mapped out, and your current reps are not making like great money. So there's no way that a sales manager is going to take override only to build out a commission sales team that is not performing. Like, you need to engineer your process first and optimize that before you can get on and build a sales manager, because it's not lack of sales reps that's slowing you down right now. It's like the lack of process and inefficiency in what you're doing.
yeah, but see, in those situations, that entrepreneur is thinking, I'll hire a sales manager, and he or she'll figure all this out. Um, and I don't know. I've been promoted to sales manager multiple times in over my career, 30 years. And the first time, I've told this story on this podcast before, but the first time I was promoted, I had no idea what the hell I was supposed to do, right? Because we were driving home. I got promoted at a Christmas party, and I'm driving home telling my wife the story, and she's like, "Have you ever managed anybody before?" Like, no. What does that have to do with anything? She's like, "You're going to have to manage 5 other people. You've never done that before." And it was like, "Oh, shit," right? But I had to go figure. And my personality, my values, whatever, is like I had to go figure it out because I made a promise that I was going to do it. And they were dumb enough to think that I already figured it out. So, um, I figured it out, and it's been an ongoing journey, just learning how to create accountability, how to develop salespeople, how to decide when people are not doing their job and they're not going to do their job. and what the costs are associated holding on to people that are mediocre or suck. So, and I think that's a trap that, we hire salespeople thinking they're going to know what they're to do, and we hire sales managers think they know what they're going to do, and they don't. And I can say from personal experience that they don't. So,
Right.
but it takes time to figure it out. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just
what's
gonna say.
the? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No worries. I was just gonna say, like, I think there's value in figuring things out for sure. Like, that's how I ended up how I am. Like, I was in a position where I didn't have experience. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just figured it out, right? But I think that a big lesson to have as an entrepreneur, like when you're hiring, like you either need to hire someone that you know, like if you don't have the process, you need to hire someone you actually know for a fact, like knows more than you and has the process for this, and you can leave them alone and let them run with it. But if you're hiring people that are much less experienced and expecting them to like outperform the current results in your company, you're setting them up to fail if you don't have like a process in place.
Amen. I mean, that's exactly it. They don't want to pay somebody a lot of money, and they're not being transparent with like, I need these two things done so you can do your job well, and I don't have them done. Right. I mean, that would be a fair way to hire somebody, for them to decide, oh, I know how to do that. I've done that 3 times. I can come do it. But you have to be clear about what needs to be done as an entrepreneur, especially in that smaller, under $10 million space where the founder's been the salesperson and just gone out just making things happen, and they don't have a process. I just did it. Okay. I mean, my favorite question is like, how do you sell something around here? And you get that weird look like, what? Like, what's your process to sell something? What does that look like? You got it written down, right? No, we just go talk to people and convince them that it's like, okay. So now you have some place to start from, and then you start to see lots of other holes. So I mean, you said a bunch of things here that I think resonate with my audience. We're going to have your contact information in the show notes, but what's your preference? What's the best way for them to reach out to you and say, hey, I heard you on that thing, and you made a great point. I'd like to talk to you. What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to reach me is really through a link I'm going to post down below, and it's going to give you a little video training of how you can kind of do like a mini audit on your business and kind of get more aware of your problems that you might be facing. And through there, you'll be able to like put in your email and stuff, and then that's how you'll get access to the rest of my information. But if you want to speak to me directly sooner, then you can always go on my website and book a call from there.
Awesome. Okay. So one question I ask all my guests, I want to ask you is, past or present, do you have a relationship with cigars, Olivia?
I've personally never smoked one, but my stepdad loves his cigars. That's kind of got me into the world of cigars. And I think that I always see, like, I think it's like a habit of successful men almost. Like, if you see a group of men smoking cigars, you kind of have an idea that they're doing pretty well.
Or we're trying.
Well, they're trying, yeah.
There's an illusion. I have a friend of mine who, well, he passed earlier this year, but he had a great line. He said, let's go grab Tommy and Bob, and the four of us go sit around and smoke cigars, have a couple of cocktails, and talk smart, right? And it was almost like we are going to solve the world's problems, right? And we're just going to sit around and have a cigar and commiserate. And there's a certain level of bonding associated with that. But I think there might be success involved, but it might just be like we're trying to get there and we want the camaraderie. But
Right. I think it's a great networking tool.
oh, it is. I belong to a couple of cigar networking events, and you have an immediate connection with somebody, right? when you're smoking a cigar. I was going to mention this. I'm smoking an Olivia Series O, which I thought was oh. So I appreciate you taking the time and indulging some of my silliness. And I think you're based in Chicago, despite the fact you have a UK British accent. So you're accessible to people all over the world, right? Because of our technology, but you're based here in the States.
Yeah.
People can get to you easily, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
cool. So we'll have everything in the show notes. Thank you much, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you for being part of the Sales and Cigars community. I want to take a quick second to share that I'm doing a free sales hiring challenge this month. I'm going to give you everything you need to hire sales superstars and avoid the sales duds. Check out the link in the show notes to be able to sign up for free.